A quiet room, a single question, and a moment that could decide whether millions of Americans ever trust their justice system again. Because what happened in this hearing wasn't just political theater. It exposed a tension that's been boiling for years, a fear that the people meant to protect us might quietly roll back the very policies that keep communities alive. And the way one nominee answered, or didn't answer, those questions has everyone asking the same thing. Is the justice system about to change in ways no one's prepared for? For the first minute of that exchange, you could feel the weight.
Senator Booker.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for the time. Ms. Bondi, thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator.
And thank you for being willing to meet with me in my office. I really value that time that we had together. If there's anything that's been demonstrated in this hearing thus far, is there is a serious crisis of faith in our judicial system in America. And we are at a time where, as Judge Learned Hand reminded us in his writings and speeches, that the power of the Constitution is only strong as long as it is believed in and had faith by the American people. And that faith is shaken by so much of the political tumult. And as we have a new administration coming in and a lot of the protestations about retribution or going after political opponents, I know you could expand your empathy enough to understand why there are many that really worry about your independence. But I've heard you over and over again in this hearing, as much as I've tried to focus on it as I've gone back and forth between Senate Foreign Relations and another Floridian, Marco Rubio. But I am hearing from you that you understand that the Attorney General's guiding star is the U.S. Constitution and her client is the American people, that there can be no argument about that.
Yes, Senator.
Yes. And more than that, though, I hope that you, should you be confirmed, understand that there is an urgency in not just demonstrating through your actions that independence, but beginning to heal this country's lack of faith and shaken faith in that independence, in the U.S. Constitution. History may not long remember what any of us individually do here, but for the sake of our democracy, what you do to restore and repair the American faith, whether they be Democrats, Independents, or Republicans, is vital. I want to switch here to say publicly that when Donald Trump appointed Craig Carpenito as the U.S. Attorney in New Jersey, it was over the objections of myself and then Senator Menendez. I was wrong in my anticipation that he would not do good things in our state. He partnered with local leaders like those in Newark, New Jersey, to dramatically drive down crime. He was good for the safety of the city in which I live and the one that I led. Part of his strategy was to focus his resources on the most violent criminals. But that also meant that he used something that you know of called prosecutorial discretion. His strategies aligned with that of local leaders and was able to create historic drops in our murder rate. You know, through your experience, and you're intimately familiar, that enforcement decisions prosecutors must make every day, which charge to bring, which plea deal to offer, or what sentencing recommendation it makes, it's very important that local prosecutors understand that. Given this enormous discretion our legal system gives them, that they are best determined to make decisions about public safety. I'm very concerned that many people are starting to call for a time in our country where the Department of Justice should prosecute state and local prosecutors who exercise that prosecutorial discretion. As Attorney General, will you commit to respecting the autonomy of state and local prosecutors?
Senator, we have to work together with state and local prosecutors. That's what I did my entire career. And if confirmed as Attorney General, I will continue to do that. They serve a vital function in our justice system.
And you understand, like in my state, that sometimes they will decide not to go after certain low-level offenses in order to use their scarce resources to focus on the strategy of pursuing more dangerous people.
Yes, Senator, I completely understand
And
that.
those decisions shouldn't be politicized if they're part of a larger public safety strategy.
No, Senator. When I was a state prosecutor, we used to sit down with the U.S. attorneys and talk about cases and work together. And that's what I'm discussing about bringing back the cooperation, between state and local
Thank you, Ms. Bondi.
governments.
I just want to continue. One of the most stunning hypocrisies I've found since I've been down here in Washington is every politician gives lip service to driving down gun violence. But the very federal authority, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearm, that is primarily focused on enforcing America's gun laws and keeping people safe, is hamstrung by federal leaders. The ATF's core responsibility is assisting in local law enforcement. When I was a mayor, I detailed local law enforcement to the ATF, but I'm stunned at how they have been stripped of resources, of their budget, and all of their capabilities to go after illegal gun running. When I was mayor of the city of Newark, we couldn't find one gun crime that was done with a legally purchased gun. But when I turned to the ATF leader at that time told me in private, we don't have the resources, support, or legal ability to go after these crimes. I am concerned about our ability to fight gun crime in America that threatens our law enforcement officers as well as people in communities from red counties to blue cities. Will you commit to doing everything you can to making sure the ATF has its resources and the legal power to pursue illegal gun runners in our country?
Senator, I will do everything in my power to prevent illegal gun runners in our country. When I left being a state prosecutor to run for Attorney General, I almost didn't run because I was working on a wire case involving illegal gun runners.
The DOJ issued in 2022 a use of force policy for its federal law enforcement officers. It was approved by the heads of the DEA, FBI, U.S. Marshals, and ATF, and many of them said it is actually a use of force policy that actually protects law enforcement officers as well as protects others from having their rights violated. It was also endorsed by the Fraternal Order of Police and NAPO, the National Association of Police Organizations. This policy is considered best practices in law enforcement. Will you commit to continuing this policy?
Senator, I have not read the policy. I will review the policy, and I will report back directly to you if I am confirmed as Attorney General, and consult with law enforcement. Absolutely.
And I would appreciate if you looked at the policy and I submit questions for the record, hoping that you can elucidate maybe more of your thoughts on this.
Certainly.
And then I will also say, as my last question, because I see my time has run out and I look forward to a second round, the DOJ issued a policy regarding chokeholds, which limited the use of no-knock warrants and chokeholds. It's worth noting that Florida has outlawed no-knock entries altogether since 1994. Would you commit to continuing the 2021 DOJ policy on these issues?
I'm familiar with the policy. I have not read it. I'm committed to reading it and studying it and reporting back to you on that policy once again.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Senator Hawley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Bondi, welcome. Congratulations.
A senator looking straight ahead, speaking not with outrage, not with showmanship, but with something deeper, urgency. He pointed out something that many Americans already feel in their bones, that the country is standing at a crossroads, a moment where faith in the system is hanging so low that even the smallest shift could shatter it completely. And sitting across from him was a nominee whose every word would signal whether the next era of law enforcement will be one of reform or retreat. Because this wasn't just a policy debate. It wasn't about technicalities or legal jargon. It was about whether the person seeking one of the most powerful roles in the country actually understands what Americans live with every single day. The fear during a traffic stop, the uncertainty of whether police encounters end peacefully, and the dread that reforms hard-won over the years could suddenly vanish with a single pen stroke. But as the questioning unfolded, something became impossible to ignore. Every time the senator pushed for clarity, the nominee gave caution. Every time he asked about a commitment, she paused. And every time he demanded to know whether she'd uphold policies that communities rely on, she offered a polite but unmistakable hesitation. And that's where this story really begins. He started by laying out the crisis. Our justice system isn't just under scrutiny, it's losing legitimacy. Not because people stopped caring about safety, but because they've watched, again and again, how politics can twist outcomes, how promises get broken, and how reforms get quietly abandoned when the cameras turn off. He reminded the nominee that the Attorney General's only real client is the American people. Not a political figure, not a party, not an ideology. The people. But he didn't stop there. The senator then shifted the conversation to something far more concrete: chokeholds. A tactic that has sparked national outrage, taken lives, and pushed millions into the streets demanding change. He asked whether she would continue the federal restrictions meant to prevent unnecessary deaths, restrictions that many see as one of the few real guardrails standing between communities and tragedy. Her answer: I'll review it. Not yes, not no, just a pause wrapped in caution. And that single moment sent ripples online. Commentators, activists, and even law enforcement reform experts started debating whether that hesitation was a sign, one that could foreshadow a rollback of policies people fought for through marches, protests, and years of advocacy. But the senator wasn't finished. He pivoted to something unexpected: a genuine moment of praise. He brought up a former U.S. attorney who used a strategy that most politicians never bother talking about. Not broad crackdowns, not sweeping fear campaigns, but precision, targeting violent offenders while partnering with local leaders who understand their neighborhoods better than any federal agency ever could. That strategy drove down crime without destroying trust. It proved that safety and fairness are not opposites. They only work when built together. The senator highlighted this to make a point. Reform doesn't mean handcuffing law enforcement. It means focusing resources where they matter most and treating communities like partners, not battlegrounds. But beneath that praise was a warning. Because while he highlighted successful models, he also pointed out how easily those models can disappear when leadership prioritizes political pressure over evidence. Then came the topic many in Washington tiptoe around: prosecutorial discretion. This is the quiet power that shapes people's lives every day, deciding whether someone gets charged, what plea deals are offered, whether low-level offenses should consume resources that could be used to chase actual violent criminals. Some politicians want Washington to step in and punish local prosecutors who choose to focus on major threats rather than minor infractions. The senator pushed back hard, warning that this idea, punishing prosecutors for prioritizing public safety over political messaging, would undercut the very foundation of local autonomy. Once again, he asked the nominee for commitment. And once again, she gave respect for collaboration, but no firm promise to be why this point in the hearing, a pattern had formed. And it wasn't lost on anyone. Then the conversation turned to the issue that might define the future of gun violence enforcement in America: illegal firearms. The senator painted a troubling picture. When he served as mayor, every gun crime they investigated involved weapons that were illegally obtained. Every single one. And when they turned to federal authorities for help, the agency responsible for stopping illegal gun trafficking, the one group that could track weapons across state lines, didn't have the resources, staff, or legal support to do it. This wasn't neglect. It was structural weakness. He explained how ATF, the very agency designed to fight gun trafficking, had been gutted. Their ability to trace weapons, build cases, and help local police had been eroded for years. And yet politicians still stand at podiums declaring the need to fight gun violence, even as they strip the agency meant to do that job. He asked the nominee directly whether she would commit to restoring ATF strength, whether she would push to give them the resources and tools necessary to actually stop the flow of illegal guns that cost lives in every corner of the country, from rural counties to major cities. Her answer: she would do everything in her power to address illegal gun trafficking. Stronger than earlier answers, but still leaving a shadow of uncertainty. Critics online noted that major political forces would push back hard on any real expansion of ATF authority. Supporters argued she needed room to review before committing. The truth lies somewhere between, but the hesitation once again raised questions. And the senator wasn't done pushing. He brought up the use of force policy issued in 2022, approved by major federal agencies and endorsed by law enforcement organizations across the country. A policy meant to protect officers and the public by clearly outlining how and when force can be used while ensuring excessive tactics are limited. This wasn't some radical idea. Many officers themselves support it because it protects them from dangerous gray areas that turn routine encounters into national news stories. Yet when he asked if she would continue the policy, the answer was the same. She hadn't read it. She would review it. She would get back to him. And that's when he circled back to one of the most emotionally charged issues of all: no-knock warrants and chokeholds. Communities have lived through tragedies tied to these tactics. They've watched loved ones hurt or killed because of sudden forced entries or restrictive holds applied during moments where panic outweighed procedure. The 2021 policy limiting these tactics was designed to prevent tragedies that had already happened far too often. But once again, the nominee didn't commit. She expressed willingness to review, willingness to study, willingness to respond later. And you could almost hear the frustration building in the senator's voice, not anger, but concern. Concern that reforms fought for by communities nationwide could slip back into the shadows. Because this wasn't just a confirmation hearing. It was a test. A moment to see whether the next era would move forward or backward. Whether safety would be built through trust or through force. Whether reforms would stay in place or be quietly reshaped. And that unanswered question, that silence between the lines, is why people are still talking about this exchange, because the tension wasn't about one policy. It was about a broader fear that leadership might shift toward prioritizing political comfort over community protection, that decades of work by activists, lawmakers, and families could be undone in a matter of months, that behind polite and careful wording, a different agenda might emerge. But here's the other side. There's also a possibility of progress. She might review the policies and choose to strengthen them. She might uphold reforms. She might expand resources for ATF. She might work with communities rather than against them. The truth is, no one knows yet. And that uncertainty is exactly why people are paying attention. Because what was on display wasn't hostility or outrage. It was a struggle over the direction of our justice system. And the questions asked in that hearing will shape debates for years to come. Will reforms be protected? Will communities be heard? Will safety be defined by trust, precision, and partnership, or by force, fear, and politics? That's the real story behind this hearing. And the real question now is what happens next. If you want to stay locked in as we follow every twist, turn, and power struggle unfolding behind the scenes, make sure you like this video, hit the subscribe button, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next breakdown. Because the next one is even more controversial.